This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. I'm back at you with another great video story, and this one is titled Wife Drank Too Much One Night, Then Tearfully Confessed to Cheating Years Ago. And this husband says, I'm furious and I'm considering divorce. And I say, sometimes alcohol is a truth serum. Now let's get into this story and see what it's all about. He starts off and he says, my wife and I are both in our mid-40s and have been married 19 years. We dated for 3 years prior and started living together the year before exchanging vows. We have two beautiful daughters, 18 and 15. The oldest started college last fall. My wife and I have always gotten along very well. We are in agreement on most things and never really had any substantial arguments. We are devoted parents, and I thought we were devoted partners. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? We openly shared lots of intimacy and had genuine affection for each other. Good families on both sides, and everyone gets along well. I have a good job and earn a good income, and she works as a fundraiser for an agency and loves her job. A few years ago, we sold our family home and moved to a new neighborhood. The house was new construction and we bought it because we were looking to downsize and it had all the latest upgrades. It's also a ranch style, so we thought it would serve us well as we got older. We had great neighbors at our old house and luckily have great neighbors at our new place too. Everyone gets along really well and looks out for each other. We've become particularly close with a couple that lives across the street from us. For this, I'll call them Jane and Joe. They're in their late 60s and are fun to be around. They're always in a good mood and you can tell they get along well. They've become like another set of parents for us. Back in October, we went on a weekend getaway with them and another couple from our neighborhood. It was a fall harvest food and wine tasting weekend and we all had a great time. We traveled from restaurant to restaurant, eating great food and drinking good wine. Friday and Friday night went great and Saturday went great as well. All of us were thoroughly enjoying it. On Saturday night, we built fires in the fire pits. The women sat with their glasses of wine and talked at one, while we guys sat around the other drinking bourbon. Neither my wife or I are big drinkers. We have maybe 1 or 2 drinks a month, tops. I didn't drink much that night, however my wife and the other ladies had a few too many. I could tell because they were getting louder and louder and laughing non-stop. I can just picture that scene. He says we jokingly had to tell them to keep it down over there several times. Around midnight, we guys walked over to join them as we were all talked out and exhausted and ready to call it a night. By this time, the ladies were cold stone drunk and nearly falling asleep. We gathered them up and walked them inside to our bedrooms. So these ladies must have really drank a lot of wine. Sitting around the fire all night, my wife and I both smelled of smoke, so we decided to take a shower. We got out, dried off, brushed our teeth, and got ready for bed like we normally do. As we were getting ready, my wife and I were discussing the evening and what we had been talking about. I could tell she was feeling a little uneasy about something, so I asked her what was up. She said Jane told them she cheated on Joe early in their marriage. So this was that older couple he was talking about. This came as a complete shock to me and I reacted accordingly. My wife said Joe forgave Jane and they went on to have 4 kids and a wonderful marriage. I made a snide remark and told her I didn't see that as wonderful if she cheated. When I said this, my wife started tearing up and I asked why she was getting upset. She then proceeds to tell me that she cheated on me early in our marriage. For a minute there, I thought she was just having alcohol-induced hallucinations, but very quickly realized she was serious. I started asking her questions, and at first she was too upset to talk. She was crying and hyperventilating. Now, you know she was putting on an act there. I can just imagine her going, because that's what kids do. So you know that that wasn't legitimate. He says finally, after she settled down, she said it started shortly after she rejoined the workforce after taking a hiatus to have our first child. The AP was a guy she worked with at the agency. She said after giving birth, she was depressed and felt really bad about herself, and she foolishly gave in to his advances. We've heard that story before. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I asked her if this was a one-time thing. Now listen to what she says. She says, no, it was like 3 times, but went on to admit they had been kissing and making out for about a month before. Now I'd like to hear her explanation of what she means by making out. She told me they carried out the affair in the office when no one else was around. By this point, I was apoplectic and started raising my voice. When she saw my reaction and realized I wasn't going to be like Joe, she started crying loud enough for others to hear. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I told her to keep it down and we'd talk about it on the drive home tomorrow. We got in bed and she tried hugging me, but I told her to stay on her side. She did that and spent the rest of the night crying into her pillow until eventually falling asleep. I didn't get any rest that night and was sweating profusely from being so stressed. I can just imagine. In the morning, I took another shower to cool off and ease my mind. After that, I went downstairs and made a pot of coffee, and the other guys joined me on the back porch. It was cool and crisp out there, and the smell of autumn was in the air. It should have been an enjoyable Sunday morning, but it was anything but. Our original plan for that day was for all of us to take it easy in the morning, then head out to Sunday brunch, and then drive home. I was in no condition to do that, so I told the guys we were going to head out early as something came up at my job I needed to attend to. After talking with them a while, I went upstairs and woke my wife. I told her to pack our things as we were leaving. She started in again with the tears and the I'm sorries, but I told her to save it for the drive home. We got everything loaded in the car and left before the other ladies got up. Before leaving, I thanked the guys and told them to tell their wives we'd see them back in the neighborhood. The drive was miserable. Imagine being exhausted and having the worst headache ever, and then having to drive 5 hours in a car with a woman who just informed you she cheated on you. It wasn't fun, and I'll admit I got animated a number of times to the point where I had to pull over to calm down. From that day forward, my life has never been the same. This all happened back in mid-October, and since then my relationship with my wife has completely changed. For now, I've decided to give myself time to think things through and do nothing until after the first of the year. I told my wife I didn't want anyone to know about any of this until I decide what I'm going to do. In the meantime, we've been acting as if everything is fine, but behind closed doors, it's been anything but. She doesn't know what I'm going to do, and it's driving her insane. You see how women respond when there's uncertainty? They just can't stand it. I've been honest and told her I don't know if I can stay married to her, and if I do, things will never be the same. I told her I didn't trust her anymore, and I also let her know I didn't love her anymore. This made her crazy, and she's asked me 1,000 times what she can do to change how I'm feeling. I've told her there's nothing she can do, and the best thing is to just give me space, but she's losing it emotionally and is constantly begging me for forgiveness. It's scary how quickly my love for her turned off. All the love and respect that had grown so strong over the years vanished in an instant. She chose to do what she did, even if it was 18 years ago, and that will forever change how I feel about her. I loved my life before this and really don't want to change anything, but I can't see how I can go on with her. Are there any strong-willed men out there who have successfully worked through something like this? If so, how did you do it? And that's the end of his original post. Now he does come back a few days later, actually 5 days later, and gives a little update. He says, since some of you have asked, here's a little more info on the scumbag she cheated with. They worked together for about 2 years at the agency. According to my wife, their affair started a few months after she started working there. So she didn't waste any time. At the time, she was 27, and this guy was single and in his late 30s. So what I see happening here is here's a young woman. She recently got married, recently had a kid. I'm sure her husband is just starting out his career and they probably don't have a lot of money. They're probably going through all the struggles. And then she gets into the workforce and she meets this older guy who's really interested in her. And she probably thinks, hey, this might be a monkey branching opportunity. That's what I think was probably going on here, but I could be wrong. She told me she did it because she was feeling depressed and unattractive and was swept up in the attention of being desired by a mature, established man. There you go. She said she never intended for it to go anywhere, but things got out of hand. That's an understatement. Those are her words, so take them with a grain of salt because I do. She swears they were only intimate 3 times, but admits to making out with him for several weeks before. She had just given birth a few months prior to starting this job, so her AP was obviously a desperate little prick who took advantage of a vulnerable woman. But she willingly participated, so as far as I'm concerned, she's 100% to blame. Amen to that, because you know what? You have a relationship with her. You don't have a relationship with this other guy. She controlled that situation there and she allowed it to happen willingly. So yes, she's 100% responsible. I personally find it hard to believe they worked together for another 18 months and never did anything else, but she swears it's true and is willing to take a lie detector test. Yeah, I find that hard to believe as well. She claims after she left the job, she lost all track of him and doesn't know where he is today and doesn't care. I tried finding him on social media and even Googled him, but couldn't find anything on him. He was originally from the UK. Oh, so we got a British guy here. So maybe he went back there. He also may have departed the world, which wouldn't disappoint me, though I know I shouldn't feel that way. As for counseling, she started going the week before Thanksgiving, and I agreed to go with her for a session after the first of the year. I might change my mind before then, but for now, that's the plan. And that's the end of his first update. And now we're at a point in this story where I want to remind you, if you like what you've heard so far, be sure to hit that like button right now. That will help out the channel tremendously and also help to get this video seen by people all over the world. Now let's take a look at some of the comments he got back. The first one's from a woman. She says, question, can you work through this? Answer, of course you can, if you want to. The question is, do you want to? Cheating is the ultimate betrayal, but it can be overcome if the betrayer is genuinely remorseful and the betrayed is open to forgiveness. I forgave my husband for cheating on me when I was pregnant with our second child. What a dog. It was hard, but I did it, and looking back now, I think I made the right decision. That was 34 years ago, and we've been really good ever since. For him, it was a stupid mistake. No, it wasn't. It was a calculated decision. And he still apologizes to me to this very day. Oh, boy. Next, here's a response from a guy. He says, cheating is a red line for me, and my wife knows that. Well, cheating should be a red line for everybody. We've been married for 13 years, and if I found out she cheated on me yesterday, 10 days ago, or 10 years ago, I'd immediately file for divorce and tell the world what she did, even if I had to spend every dollar I had to do it. I wouldn't disrespect myself like that and couldn't live with myself. I know everyone is different, but that's me, and that's how I'd handle it. And I think a lot of guys in my audience out there would probably respond the same way. The next response is also from a guy. He says, it can work, but your wife is going to have to do all the heavy lifting and she's going to have to do it forever. And he says that in capital letters. My wife confessed to a one-night stand 4 years ago. I left and was moving forward with divorce, but then decided to give her a second chance after she gave me a list of promises I couldn't refuse. Well, what was on that list of promises? I'd like to see that. She's been great ever since, but she knows there can be no let-up. If things slip or if she upsets me for any reason, she knows I'll be gone faster than Speedy Gonzales. Now listen, I think I had another story where somebody referenced Speedy Gonzales, or maybe it was Speed Racer. Anyway, those are cartoons I used to watch years ago, but it's just funny how those things have popped up in some of these stories. And then finally, we have another response from a woman. She says, I don't know you or your wife personally, but from the sounds of things, you had a great marriage, discounting this one situation. Well, this is one big situation. I believe you both need counseling, both individually and as a couple. He doesn't need counseling. She may, but he doesn't. He didn't do anything. You said you haven't told anyone about this, which means you've been bottling up all those emotions inside, which isn't healthy. A good counselor will help you open up and get all those negative thoughts out of your mind. After that, you can then decide with a clear mind if your marriage is worth saving. So that's a look at some of the responses he got back. And now I want to take a look at his final update so we can see how everything turned out. And this final update came over 6 months later. He says, I've had some extra time this Memorial Day weekend, so I've decided to write this update, even though I wasn't planning to for several reasons, which I won't disclose. Now, I wonder why he won't disclose why he wasn't planning to do this. For the time being, I've made the decision to stay in my marriage after giving it a lot of thought. For those of you who didn't see my original post, I've been married going on 20 years now to what I thought had been the perfect wife. There is no such thing. Last fall, my wife and I went off with some friends on a weekend retreat. One night, my wife got really drunk with the other ladies, then confessed to me that she had an affair with a guy she used to work with early on in our marriage. After finding this out, I didn't want anyone to know, as I didn't want our families, especially our daughters, to think less of their mother. Yes, the girls are mine. They look just like me, and we all did the 23andMe thing a few years ago. Well, that's all well and good, but if it were me, knowing what you know now, I probably would go out and get another DNA test done just to confirm things. Not to say you're going to walk away from your daughters, because they're your daughters no matter what the situation is, but just to ease my mind, I probably would do that. I didn't want to make a bad decision and wanted to let everything settle out to see how I felt after 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, etc. Even though I've decided to stay in the marriage, my relationship with my wife is different now. I no longer trust her, and I still have not regained the love I once had for her. I definitely don't love her on the same level that I love my daughters or even my parents. So after confessing to cheating, she's definitely fallen way down the list on his priorities. It's more on the level of a business partner, not even as a friend, as a true friend wouldn't betray you like that. I guess it's more like a close acquaintance. We still sleep in the same bed together and have X a few times a month, but before all this, it was more like a few times a week. She's been going to counseling, and I went with her to one session back in January. The counselor was all into this mental theory of why my wife did what she did. I flat out told her I didn't buy any of it. I don't buy she was depressed. I don't buy she felt ugly. I don't buy she needed to be validated by another man. I told her I do buy she did it to satisfy her own selfish pleasures. I warned the counselor that nothing she could say or have my wife do would get me to change my mind, and told her to drop the subject. The counselor backed off, but I could tell she was shocked by my response. The only other notable thing that came out of the session was some questioning she had for me about the fact that my wife and I never stopped making love. I corrected her and told her we no longer make love. We just have X now. Now listen to what he says next. He says, I told her for me it's a necessary bodily function, just like pissing or taking a dump. And he actually used the S word there. You've got to do it for relief, and when you do it, it feels really good, but you don't think anything of it once it's done. It's a crude description, I know, but that's how I feel about it now. She asked me to explain further, and I told her it's something that has to be done, and since I'm still sharing a home with my wife, I'll continue doing that with her if she's willing. The counselor said it sounds like you're just using her. I told her, yeah, in a way, you're right. Just like her AP did. Ooh. The counselor was not thrilled with my attitude, and I didn't go back for a second session, even though my wife begged me to. She still sees the same counselor every few weeks for follow-up and says it's really helped her. That's fine if it has, and she can keep going forever if she chooses. It's not going to change my mind in any way. He says in capital letters, I haven't forgiven her and never will, no matter what she does or says. When I weighed everything out, the reason I stayed is I like my life. I'm 47 and really don't want to go through trying to find another woman or become a bachelor. That's not me, and I have no interest in either option. I also don't want to give up half of everything I've built over 20 years and pay some attorney a fortune to do it. I may be naive, but I do believe my wife's story to an extent, but I don't believe it was just the 3 times. I believe she kept the affair going the whole time she worked with him, and nothing she can do or say will ever change my mind. And you know what? That's what I think happened too. She swears otherwise, but I've told her to just drop it as I no longer want to discuss it. The only thing that has really changed are the way I feel about her. Gone forever are the feelings of trust and love I once had for her. Now, he's mentioned that 3 times, so you can tell this is really top of mind for him. The fact that he wants everyone to know I no longer trust this woman, and guess what? I don't even love her anymore. He says everything else is about the same and in some ways better, as now there are no expectations of me from her to do anything. When you're in a balanced marriage, you and your wife compromise on things. You want to do this, she wants to do that, and you net somewhere in the middle. Now my wife knows with me there is no compromising on anything. I do what I want when I want. Like her asking me if I want to go with her to visit her parents. Normally, I would always go because of a sense of family responsibility and to make my wife happy. Now I go if I want to go, but I don't go if I don't want to. I'm just using this as an example, as I actually have a great relationship with my in-laws and enjoy spending time with them, but you get my point. The last thing I'll say here is about my decision to keep this between my wife and I, as many of you questioned me for doing that. Since for now I'm not planning on going anywhere, I don't think anyone else needs to know. If we do end up divorcing one day, that's a different story. I'll let the world know what she did. For now, I don't want my daughters to know, as I don't want them to think less of their mother, and I don't want them to think less of me for staying with her. Telling others now would make them treat us differently, and I don't want that. Have you ever been around a couple where it's known that one party cheated and they stayed together? I have, and everyone is uncomfortable being around them, as the cheating is always the ever-present elephant in the room. And that's true, because I've known situations like that, and forevermore, that couple will always be remembered by, oh, she cheated on him, or oh, he cheated on her. That's just the way it goes. One final thing, I did end up finding the AP. He works on staff at a small agency up in Vermont, of all places, and looks just like you'd expect. A very feminine looking guy pushing 60 who's obviously on the left side of everything. I was going to reach out to him to see if my wife's story lined up, but I decided not to for many reasons. By the way, my wife was a lefty early on in our marriage, but she's now to the right of me on most things, and I'm very conservative. Well, that should have been a big red flag for him right there, because as you know, women who tend to be on the progressive side of things, that's one of the tenets that they always talk about. Hey, it's my body and I can do with it whatever I want. And oftentimes that means I can go off and have relationships with as many men as I want to. For her, I think she changed after the birth of our second daughter, or maybe she changed after having the affair, realizing weak men are not good marriage material. Whatever the reason, we're closely aligned on just about everything today, which also factored into my decision. He says I'm going to end things here and don't plan on giving further updates, as I'm done with all this and want to put it all behind me. I originally set this account up to read product reviews and for DIY tips, but mostly have been using it to read the cheating board since all this started. I'm back to using it for the original purpose and have stopped looking at the relationship stuff, as it's just a depressing sea of toxic soup. I'm feeling better about things now, but that might all change tomorrow, and if it does, I'll act accordingly. And that's the end of his story. So I thought it was a great story. The only thing is, I don't think I would have handled the situation the way he did. Now, I just know myself. I don't know if I could stay in that marriage. Now, that's just me. Other people may feel differently and they may agree with what this guy did. But for me, I just know my personality, and it probably wouldn't work out. So now what I want to do is take a look at what I think are some of the morals of this story. The first one. People with polar opposite social and political values are generally not good matches, especially if you've got one partner who is very conservative and the other who is very progressive. That just does not work in today's day and age. Now, there probably are situations out there where it works great and they have a wonderful relationship, but I haven't seen any. The The only thing I'm warning men about is be very careful before you get into a serious relationship with them. And for God's sakes, be careful before you marry someone like that. Next, young women are prone to monkey branching, especially if their partners are not self-confident, successful, or driven, and they perceive the other guy to be. And again, I'm going back to what I referenced before. I think that's what happened with this guy's wife. She saw this older guy. He was obviously further along in his career. She probably thought, hey, this guy's got more going for him than my husband. Let me see if there's an opportunity here to maybe monkey branch to him. And for whatever reason, she decided not to do that. And maybe the affair partner dropped her. We'll never know. But that's what I think happened in this story. Next. Alcohol can be a truth serum for some people. You'd be surprised at the things that are disclosed once a person has a few drinks in them. You know, some of those secrets they've been burying deep inside all of a sudden come out because they feel, less restricted. So if you got a deep-seated secret that you want to keep inside, I would say keep away from the alcohol. Next. The person betrayed should never feel ashamed or embarrassed. You've done nothing, so why do you feel ashamed or embarrassed? The only person who should feel those feelings is the betrayer. And finally, the betrayed will never truly forgive or forget what the betrayer did, no matter what they say, do, or promise to do. Some people may clap back at me and say, oh no, I know situations where, it was able to be worked out and this one forgave this one and that one forgave that one and they went on and they lived happily ever after. Nah, I guarantee if you peel back the onion there and you get into their brains, you're going to find out that they were all just putting on a facade for the most part because deep down inside, they never really got over it. So those are my thoughts, and now I want to hear from all of you. What did you think of this story, and how do you think this guy handled the situation? Would you have done what he did and stayed with your wife, or would you have split the scene and filed for divorce? Tell us about it in the comments. Also, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.